Welcome, goats, sea cats, and witch hunters, to the climax of our Umineko Tea Party podcast. We're here with Alliance of the Golden Witch, the final episode of the question arcs, and it's time for us to finally close in on the witch's mystery. We are Rakenjima, and I'm the World End Administrator Aspirety. Joining me this week, we have the Apprentice Warlock of Sleuthing, Seraphitic.
Hello, everybody.
The Apprentice Soggy Sorcerer, soggysadboi.
Hello.
And the Apprentice Warlock of Authorship, NotKyon.
Hello.
The pieces are finally assembled for this final game. I hope you guys are prepared for what's about to unfold. I'm very excited.
That prepared thing that you just said, I don't...
What?
I'm sure the pieces are all there, but I'm not quite seeing their
Come on, guys.
arrangement just yet.
Didn't you bring the stuff?
I mean, this is approximately how I felt with episode 2, I think. You know that feeling when you know that you should be able to get more than you're getting, and you just sort of don't? That's sort of how I feel. I don't know about you guys, but like, I reached the end, and I was like, okay, Battler's a moron, but like, you know, maybe some of what he said was okay. And then Lando was like, oh yeah, and also almost everything Battler said was wrong, and I was like, good, I'm glad, wonderful.
You thought it was over.
Oh, that's just the greatest, yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Well, I knew it wasn't over, because of course, you know, there's Chiru still to come, but I was just sort of hoping that maybe Battler was right about a few more things than he appears to be right about. Just because I wanted, you know, I wanted Battler to have something by the end of this.
The heavy majority of his arguments were very much stupid devil's proof bullshit that Beatrice just kind of handed him. Like, that's hilarious. Sure, let's go with that.
Small bombs, whatever, sure.
Anyway, before we get too carried away, I'd like to introduce the 30-second recap.
Welcome to this episode of Depressed Kids, written by Phil Gashio-7 about the wonders of being a delusional lunatic wanting to kill all your classmates and talk to stuffed animals. All while your family gets murdered endlessly by a sadistic witch that may or may not exist that you must fight in nothing but the powers of logic. On your side is a man who may or may not be dead, and your brother, but not actually a brother. Or is he? Wait, what kind of mindfuck is being thrown at me this time?
Ha ha ha! That was hilarious and totally not edited in at the last second.
Yeah. Real doozy.
Okay, so now I guess a bit of like a preface. So where are we at the moment? We're at episode 4, the end of the question arcs. This is the point where I guess you've pretty much received, I don't know if I want to say a confirmation, but it feels like we've wrapped up Beatrice's game board. And this is kind of like, it's been packaged now, it's all wrapped up for Christmas, and it's presented to you. Here, solve it. Maybe past episodes you could get away with the excuse that, oh, there's not enough information, I can't solve anything with this. But now you've got all the pieces of the puzzle, and now it's just a matter of finding out how they fit together. And I know telling you this, you're probably going to feel dissatisfied when you realize you don't have an answer. But that's fine.
Oh, don't worry, I felt like that for a while.
That's fine, because it's not that the story expects you to have an answer at this point. It's that if you have an answer at this point, then way to go, you are the 1%. Most people probably won't have it figured out till episode 5, episode 6, at best. I know lots of people didn't have anything figured out until episode 7, which is pretty much where everything is opened up.
Arabla.
Yeah, Rabla couldn't figure it out until I had to spell it out to her. It's like, oh, now I get it. Which was really sad for me. But hopefully you guys will have a better chance than he did. But yeah, I don't know. I've been following you guys since the beginning. Maybe not so much Soggy, because he's kind of new. Soggy, have you posted on the forum at all for this?
For episode 4, no.
Okay, you were in past episodes, I think. But yeah, I've been watching you guys, and you guys have put up a very strong front. It's kind of like a microcosm of the Umineko community from 5 years ago, or whenever it was, when it was first being translated to English. And I get to see all these theories and stuff coming up, and I see many common elements to what what past players would do. You're kind of like retracing the steps there, and in other ways you're innovating and making up these crazy new theories that I never even considered before that are awesome, and I almost wish were true. And I can't really comment on how accurate any of your theories are going to be. So I want you to lay out anything that comes to mind this episode, and I'm not going to say if it's right or wrong. And basically, that's going to suck, but you need to grit and bear it, because I am not the Witch of Certainty, and I'm not going to grant you the truth you so desire. But what I want from this podcast is for everyone to put forward their thoughts without feeling ashamed or feeling like it's going to be silly, because truth is stranger than fiction, even though this is fiction. But then you get into like layers and stuff, and like there's the meta and the real world, and so like what is fiction anyway? So I'm rambling.
Don't worry, if I felt silly putting up any of my theories, I probably wouldn't have nearly anything posted on the forums.
Exactly. And so what you're going to see now is that the remaining episodes are going to be sort of supplementary material to help guide your thinking. It's not necessarily like going to provide information you need to solve the cases, but it's going to help guide your thinking towards certain answers. Like right now, it's kind of just like, here's all the clues, you figure it out. Remaining episodes are going to like kind of narrow down your options a bit. And that's kind of, it's cool like that. I really do like Chiru. It's very different. But episodes 1 to 4 are very much the core of Umineko that you're meant to solve. And it's so weird to think you're halfway done with the series and it's already over, but that's kind of how Umineko works. The second part has some different things to mull over that aren't so much the core mystery. Anyway, I won't say too much about that. You can look forward to that in however long it takes for it to release. Hopefully not too long, because I know that the Witch Hunt are working very hard to get it out as quick as possible. So hopefully we won't have to wait too long for that. But so with that little long preface out of the way, let's dive into episode 4, Alliance of the Golden Witch. Now then, let's start with Maria, because that's kind of like the early part of the story, and I know that some of you weren't too fond of it, but we really do need to talk about it, because it did take up quite a large portion of this episode.
I personally loved it.
You loved it?
Yeah, I find Maria an incredibly interesting character for some reason.
Elaborate.
Okay.
Sorry. I mean, something about Maria, the fact that she, at least at first, just seemed incredibly creepy and seemed to have no depth to her, and just generally just seemed as this weird kind of like, hey, look at me, I'm creepy, I'm the kid. Kind of gets a lot of depth to her in this episode, and for some reason I just really had a lot of fun and felt a lot going through that. And seeing what really kind of makes Maria tick.
NotKyon, what do you think?
I really appreciated her backstory being there and being able to see her interactions with her mother much closer. It made some of the earlier stuff in the other episodes make a little bit more sense to me. And being able to see kind of why it is that she's so into magic, or at least why it is that I think that she's so into magic, play out was pretty interesting. I wasn't a fan of how long it went on and how much it displaced the actual game board, but it was nice to find out everything, especially the origin of Ooh.
Yeah, that hit me hard when I first read it.
Like a baseball bat to the face.
It's like, wow, I feel like a dick now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like every time Battler made fun of it, I was like, oh.
Yeah, like the whole... Like, it kind of really puts a new spin on things when you consider how Maria's whole magic thing is basically a form of escapism, and like, it kind of like the black magic has become her way of dealing with a traumatic event. It's kind of like she's kind of sealed away her heart into a place unreachable. She just hides behind this creepy smile and this sort of like witch persona. But you realize whenever she's doing that, it's just to basically stop herself from breaking down emotionally. It's like, because she can't handle it. She just... Yeah, it's very, very dark.
It's like her own way of giving herself hope, kind of.
It is. Like, that's definitely what the magic is for her. But it's also very tinged with sadness, especially when you start to realize that Sakataro has been ripped apart by Rose's hands, and that's kind of like been the trigger for Maria's spiral into the dark magic, or the black magic as they call it. Which is all filled with like hatred and malice and all that. one thing like I really feel from episode 4, it's something we've kind of got glimpses of before, but it really comes into play now, is that Umineko isn't just a mystery. And I know, like, the mystery has definitely been the focus of these tea parties, and for good reason. It's fucking amazing. And I'm not to say that these scenes have nothing to do with the mystery, because they do. It's all tied together. I'll let you reason that out however you like. But the fact is that it's not just about solving a mystery. It's not just a mathematical equation. There is people here. The characters feel like real people, and they have their own real struggles and things that we can connect with. And it's just as much of an emotional roller coaster as it is a compelling mystery narrative. And that's something that was kind of shown in previous episodes with the character interactions and stuff. I feel like episode 2 especially had a lot of like sort of like the romantic drama there. But this is taking things in a very dark direction for the series, I feel. Now, how do you guys like share my sentiments or not?
Yeah.
Seraphitic. Seraphitic, you go.
Oh, alright. I mean, I really like the fact that there's a lot of like some character-driven stuff happening now, as opposed to just sitting there trying to figure out what the plot is exactly. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, we're not just trying to figure out what the story is and who the killer is. We're like actually getting some depth to these characters and everything like that. And it's especially nice because you know, you start out in episode 1 and, you know, a bunch of characters are killed off before you even get to know them. Or, you know, certain characters just have some, like Maria's you know, it's just like a quirk that you don't really have any idea what it's for, or what the context is for it, or anything like that. And it's sort of nice to have some development and some, you know, just some scenes that, you know, I mean, not knowing the answer to the mysteries, I guess, we don't exactly know all of what those scenes are trying to say, you know, in terms of clues or whatever. But at least we can sort of get some idea of the characters from them. And that, look,
I'll make a bold assertion.
People...
Once you've finished Umineko 1 through 8, if you read it again, it will be 10 times sadder.
I mean, I'll bet. I mean, I know that there's lots of stuff that I've forgotten or, you know, haven't picked up on what it means. But I just mean, like, even this first time, it's nice to have some depth being shown in these characters, as opposed to just, you know, okay, Maria's annoying, Rosa's sort of, you know, a terrible mother, you know, moving on.
She's still
like,
a terrible
there's
mother.
Actually, like, a lot.
I felt like it was kind of a way to draw you back into the story, because when you're analyzing the mystery, you're kind of taking a step back and looking at everything with a very factual perspective. But giving the characters depth kind of draws you back into the story and kind of reminds you you're reading a piece of fiction. You're not trying to solve a math problem, as you kind of mentioned earlier.
It's kind of interesting how that worked out with, you know, the episodes up until now. It's kind of been this sort of like tug of war between emotionally charged and like rational. I'm trying to put my thoughts into words here. Just sort of like with Battler's role in the story. Like, sometimes he'll be fighting because of an emotional need, like he wants to save NJ, and other times he'll be, you know, trying to be cool and collected. And then it's kind of like you need to weigh up what's your purpose for being here. Like, Battler kind of forgets his purpose midway and it's just become a game to him. But then NJ comes back and it's like, no, you have to save me. And kind of becomes more emotionally charged. And sort of, I don't know. I guess I'm kind of scattered in my thoughts here, but I definitely feel like there's something there.
And I mean, it sort of feels like it's serving a similar purpose to the fantasy scenes in some ways.
Yeah.
Like, sort of drawing you in with sort of some exciting scenes that, you know, you can analyze, but I always like to sort of lose myself in the fantasy and analyze them later.
Yeah, same here.
Just sort of, just enjoy the moment, enjoy the cool stuff, and enjoy, I guess in this case, you know, sort of the characters just being, I mean, well-written characters, I guess.
Now, there's a few things we need to talk about when it comes to, like, the Maria stuff, the NJ stuff, and common themes that come up here. There's stuff like, let's start with the nature of truth and stuff like, without love it cannot be seen. I guess this all started with the chat with Okanogi. That's his name, wasn't it? Yeah.
I think that the discussion that they had regarding what the nature of truth is and that you need love to see it was kind of an eye-opening thing, so to speak. It's showing that you don't have to look at things just one way. You can consider it from other perspectives too, and that you can consider it from like the views of another character, or like just viewing it from the reasoning didn't have to be this way. You can think of it a whole other way, and that just kind of played throughout the rest of the narrative, where they would show, well, the secret to this magic is love, but the secret to this magic is it's vengeance. It's just a dark type of magic here. It's not the type of magic that you gain from love for somebody.
On the one hand, you know, you're like reading and, you know, trying to figure out who the killer is. You know, you're trying to find this objective truth, I guess, you know, trying to figure out who exactly it was that killed, you know, who's killed all these people. And then, you know, you sort of get told in episode 4, oh, maybe people's truth is different, and, you know, I'm sort of, I don't know, I'm conflicted about that.
I think that there might be just one truth, one unified truth that you can look at. It's just, I think that this particular aspect is more meant as a tool for the
kind of like an extension on the flipping the chessboard around theory that Kyrie had, except more from an emotional side there rather than a just purely factual side.
Yeah, I mean, I see what you mean. It is sort of a bit of that. I mean, at least for the conversation with Okanogi, it seems, you know, like he's saying, you're not considering all of the possibilities because you don't have, well, I mean, he calls it love, but, you know, you don't have the ability to believe some people, I guess, kind of.
Yeah, it's kind of like, you know, expand your perspectives a little bit, open your eyes a little bit wider, and try to see, you know, some things aren't necessarily just automatically. It's basically, don't assume things, is kind of the way I saw that.
I don't know. It's weird that he calls it love. Is that weird to anyone else? It doesn't seem like love is the word.
I'd say, because love comes in many forms. What kind of love is he talking about? I mean,
I just interpreted love to be more of like
happiness?
Just viewing things more positive. Just kind of looking at things from the perspective of, oh, this person is doing this for someone else. They're not doing this because they hate you, or they're not doing this because of some malicious intent, even though it's coming across that way. They're doing this because they love you, because they like you, or they're doing this because they're trying to get a positive out of this, and it might not be a selfish thing.
Yeah,
necessarily.
Yeah, it's very flowery language,
which
course.
Is sort of weird when talking about the Ushiromiyas, who are basically the epitome of selfishness in some places.
I really love how they use Ava as the focal point there, and just like, whether you love your aunt or not determines whether or not she's the culprit, and that really does ring true for all of Umineko. There's so many scenes where I'm just like, if you look at this from a different angle, then they're not so bad, but if you like want to look at them as a selfish bastard, then they are a selfish bastard.
Yeah, space color.
You know what I mean? And it really, that's so important when it comes to like determining motives of murder and that kind of thing, because you really need to try and step into the person's shoes and try to see things from their perspective. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to empathize with them, but at the very least you need to consider an option which does paint them in a brighter light. So like, yeah, it's kind of like determining if someone is innocent or not. You need to look at things from all perspectives, and that's such a poignant message, I feel.
I remember when Ange showed up, and she was talking about how, you know, she was trying to think of it from Eva's perspective, and how, you know, the one thing that was left for her and her family, and was asking her where her parents were and all these other things, that it was kind of no wonder that she started kind of hating her rather than instead of being the one kind of light she could have.
Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, they're sort of in the same situation. I mean, Anjay has lost all of her family, and Ava has lost all of her family. And, you know, it's instead of, you know, comforting each other, it kind of ends up they start stabbing at each other, I guess.
Mm-hmm. It's very interesting. I really like the scene where they're like, her tears at the funeral, fake or real, is kind of like the one point where you can't just like be a detective and just write, yeah, they're fake. You know, that's kind of like, this is something that really appeals to me in psychology and epistemology, is this idea of truth and how it concerns the human heart. Because, sure, there might be an objective reality of, is this book I'm holding real or not? Is it purple? You can represent that in a numerical value of 0 or 1. But if you were to ask someone, do you love me? Now, you can't represent that in 0 and 1. Maybe you can get very close to 1 or very close to 0, but the human mind is much more of a sort of... it's kind of like a Schrodinger's cat box. How like... or just like the... what do you call that? Like superposition and all that shit. Basically, yeah, we're going quantum. I like to use that analogy when thinking of the human brain, is that the brain is in sort of a superposition, where it's kind of like our brain isn't a simple circuitry of ones and zeros. It's much more fluid, and the way our thoughts work, it's not something that can be represented with like defined values, because of the way it works. It's a lot more complicated than that. And so we can have a situation where you can love someone and hate someone at the same time and not be able to tell a difference. You know what I mean?
I was going to say that, like, that the human brain doesn't really view the number 1 as the number 1. It views it as the factors that make up number 1. You know, half and half and the quarter times, stuff like that.
Yeah, sure. But I'm just comparing a brain to a computer here as like a much more complicated computer. And like, if we try to represent the human heart in terms of a truth value of true or false, do you love this person or not? You can't answer that definitively. You can give a good estimate based on the knowledge you have, like, oh, this person looks at me with puppy dog eyes, they must love me. But then we don't know for sure. There might be a part of them that actually hates you. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, if you really get down to it and you're trying to observe the universe through an objective lens of truth and fact, you can't do that with people. It's not really possible. This is a really weird rant, but I hope you understand what I'm trying to communicate.
No, we do. I mean, at least I do. It's kind of like...
It is kind of a nice reminder that, you know, sometimes we can't always quantify everything, you know, all nice and neatly. So, I mean, you know, we can say, oh, this person stabbed this person. You know, like, that's a nice true or false type of thing, but like, now that we're sort of later on into the game and we're trying to figure out motives and why, and you know, trying to figure out and unravel all of the past events, it's kind of a bit nice to remember, oh, these are characters who have, you know, thoughts and feelings that you can't always just say, yes, this is true and this is false.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess, like, Umineko's really, episode 4 in particular, is really trying to get you thinking along those lines of looking at things through different perspectives. So there seems to be a very nihilistic bent in how, well, of course, like, NJ is, like, trying to find peace with her past and like trying to seek out the truth, but then it also brings up numerous times that she's having these sort of suicidal thoughts and that she just wants to like disappear, and I think it's only at the very end that she actually starts to question that. And she's not the only character that has similar thoughts in the story. Maria in particular, I feel like Maria in particular kind of goes through this as well with her mother, and just like she wants to go to the Golden Land where her mother is always happy. Now I really want to talk about that because we haven't really talked a lot about the Golden Land in our podcasts, and I don't think Umineko has talked about it a lot either. It's just kind of a thing that happens when Beatrice comes back. Here's my thought: the Golden Land is just a big analogy for suicide. It's just like basically destruction, the end of everything, and sort of peace in death. That's kind of how I'm taking to view the Golden Land these days, and I don't know if I should be offering my perspectives, but that's kind of the feeling I get. And when we talk about returning to the Golden Land, we're saying, sure, we'll kill everybody so no one has to be sad anymore. It's kind of a dark way of putting it.
I mean, it is dark, but I mean, I could see that being the case. I mean, it's like we'll be reunited in the Golden Land. It's like when you die, you're essentially, united with the rest of the people who have died in the planet. It's just kind of, figuratively, in a way.
I'd agree that it would be that way, but I'd only view it that way in a metaphorical sense from where I'm at right now in the story. I don't know if that makes very much sense the way I just phrased it, but...
Well, no, that's fine. But then you do get scenes in the actual meta which take place in the Golden Land in this episode, which makes things even more interesting. And there they present sort of a fake happiness where, like, it's not that everyone's happy, it's that there's no sadness. It's kind of like
the zero value
reduced to nothing.
About.
Yes, zero, yeah. Everything's reduced to zero, which really does feel like death to me, in a metaphorical sense.
Yeah. See, I don't know. See, the thing is, on the one hand, I can sort of see that, but on the other, that doesn't really seem to have any precedent in the story so far. It doesn't seem like death is particularly welcomed, I guess? I don't know. It seems like more or less universally death is sort of seen as a negative thing in the series.
Yeah, but by who?
I mean...
By the victims?
It seems like just about everyone. I mean, even Maria, who's looking forward to the Golden Land, says that like they'll be resurrected and like led to the Golden Land. It's not like they die and go to the Golden Land. It's like they get raised back to life and go to the Golden Land. So it's I don't know.
Although Maria would be pretty likely to believe just about anything. At least that's my belief so far.
As we know from her magic thing, she's very quick to cling to anything that has any sort of hope for her.
Yes, you can look at it either way. You can look at it as Maria being influenced by the culprit into believing that she actually will be resurrected, or you could spin it in a more negative way and say that Maria is pretty much done with life and she's just like, yeah, she doesn't care anymore.
Pretty dark thoughts for a 9-year-old.
Yeah, but considering what she's been through, I wouldn't put it past her, to be honest.
I think that's fair.
Yeah. And then you need to consider this whole point about the Golden Land. It's kind of Beatrice's domain, isn't it? It's kind of like that's where she wants to send everyone. So, what does that say about our culprit?
I mean, I don't know. The way I've sort of been taking the Golden Land is because the scene that we see with Anjay, Maria, and Beatrice, sort of in their Golden Land, it seems like the Golden Land is sort of this imaginary world that Beatrice has created for her and Maria to, like, enjoy together, sort of, Like, they're just
drink tea forever.
Yeah, they're just gonna chill there in the rose garden, drink tea, and watch the golden butterflies. Like, that sort of seems to be what their Golden Land is. So, I don't know. It seems to be like the Golden Land is sort of any form of escapes from reality.
That's
maybe
another way of interpreting it. Yeah.
Like, I mean, you could say that would include suicide, maybe. Like
I'm kind of taking it in the natural extreme, but yes, like at a more basic level, the Golden Land is very much portrayed as a method of escape.
Yeah.
Escape from feelings, escape from worries, escape from the mortal world. Depends how you want to look at it.
You could argue that just all of magic, Like, that's what it is. Like, for Maria, it's an escape.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, for us, it's also an escape. Like, people who are trying to, like, solve the mystery. It's like an escape from having to, like, think about, you know, who did it. Like, Battler was accepting magic at first because, you know, he didn't want to accuse any of his family or any of the people that he knew. So, I mean, you could argue that any...
No, you are very right.
I suppose
I think you hit the nail on the head there. Sorry, keep interrupting.
No. Yeah, no, that was my full point. Just, you know, magic and the Golden Land is just a way of escape from the harsh realities, I guess.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, because that was brought up in the story. NJ concludes after a while that magic is a form of escapism. We really see this hammered in hard with the scenes in St. Lucia Academy, where they're just using magic as a form of psychological escape from the torment of everyday life.
Oh man, those scenes were the best. Like, of the first half where it's, you know, NJ and Maria, any scenes where NJ is sort of like in her academy, and those were my favorite. Those were the best ones, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's kind of almost as if Beatrice is something I just thought of a second ago. Beatrice almost as if she's a metaphor for death in herself, and magic as well. And that magic is essentially just any way of humans trying to find a way to escape death. And everyone's talking about how, you know, Beatrice did this, Beatrice did that, as if death was kind of a culprit in itself, rather than the factors that cause it. Something like that. Sorry, I had a much clearer thought of this a second ago.
No, I was just saying that, like, the scenes where Anjay is in her academy and, you know, getting bullied or doing magic or whatever, reading from Maria's diary, those always seem to be, like, the best scenes to me in the first half. Just, you know, the, I don't know, sort of the insight that you get into Anjay's personality, you know, why she wants to figure out what went on Rakanjima, sort of understand. I don't know. They always seemed like the best scenes to me, and just like sort of the raw emotion that you get for that one scene where she destroys all of the 7 stakes.
Yeah, that was good. That was really good.
Like, I don't know. Just that whole thing was just it was just so packed full of so many, like, really, really well thought out, well done, everything. I don't know. Everything was wonderful about that scene. I'm aside from the...
Discussion.
It's so good. It was so good. I loved it. It was like Anjay's, just her emotional breakdown at that moment was just like fantastic. It was so on point.
And I feel like it's something that was kind of coming from episode 1, and that we're forced to, like, swallow all these magical scenes, and up until this point our position has always been to deny them, to force through and break through the mystery of Beatrice, because the magic is seen as an obstacle to the truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
But episode 4 kind of paints magic in a different light. It's kind of like turning things on its head, where magic ends up becoming something almost relatable, where it's less about actually being a wizard and casting spells and more as a form of escapism and creating happiness is kind of Maria's take on it. And that's kind of goes through to NJ a bit. But then after a while, NJ is like, wait, maybe this is all just in my head. But it's not even that. It's her realizing, no, this was all in my head all along. I was just trying to ignore that fact. And that's when the magic falls apart and all the stakes are destroyed. And I feel like that's a thought process many of us would have had reading this, especially since we've gone through the process of actively denying magic for the entire story. Now, what's interesting here is that I don't think Umineko is trying to tell us, like, make a preachy statement on whether magic exists in the real world or not. I don't think that's what it's trying to do. Yeah. I can see how some people might feel that way, especially after the ending on Rakenjima, like with Kasumi. But yeah, like, I don't think that's what it's going for. Like, that was probably my first read through, I kind of thought that, but then the more I dwell on it, the more I realize there's more here. And I feel like, especially with the later scenes where NJ kind of like reaches a resolution, like a compromise almost with the witch side. It's like she summons the stakes without believing in them, which is weird, and the stakes are like, what the fuck, that shouldn't be possible. And she's like, just because I don't believe in you doesn't mean you don't exist. And it's like, wow. So it's kind of like it very much comes back to almost like theology in the real world, where there is many people who believe in gods or some sort of higher being, and there are many people who don't. And I think what Umineko is trying to teach us here is a compromise where you can not necessarily believe in something, but still respect the beliefs of others and not want to trample on them just because you don't agree. And I feel like that's really what Umineko is trying to preach here, that you don't have to believe in magic to accept it. What do you think about that, NotKyon?
I think that's a very respectable belief. I hadn't thought of it in exactly that way, but I got basically the same effect as what you did, where I just felt that they were trying to make a comparison between magic and something else. Not necessarily some sort of theological thing, but just interactions with people in general.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be
theological. People have a lot of different beliefs.
Yeah.
So somebody can believe in something or do something or not like something, and that's all fine because that's just what those people believe. They might believe this for different reasons, some form of escapism, or just something that they happen to like. And if it's something like that, where somebody just is a certain way, you don't have to deny them. You don't have to invalidate their existence, their life leading up to that point.
Yeah.
You can be accepting that they've walked a different path than you have, that they've reached different conclusions than you did, and that doesn't necessarily invalidate your own thoughts either. You don't have to believe that because somebody thinks differently than you, that you can't think the way that you do.
Yeah. Well, very well put. Thank you for sharing that.
But
Yeah.
while at the same time, I don't know. It's kind of one of those things where it's a bit paradoxical, because while they have that in there, they also have sort of this feeling of, okay, but there still is, like, there is kind of this truth that you're trying to reach, in spite of everything. You're still sort of reaching for some kind of objective truth through all this. And it's kind of, I don't know, it's this weird paradox of, okay, maybe, maybe magic exists for you and doesn't for me and all this, but at the same time, you're still a detective trying to, I mean, like what we said, there's different layers to Umineko, and, there's sort of the characters and fantasy and everything like that, so it's not all just detective stuff. But there is this undeniable detective feeling where I'm trying to figure out a mystery and I'm trying to reach some kind of objective truth and, figure out who did this. I don't know, it's weird. It's a clever balance, I think, because even though you have this paradox, you don't feel like it's disjointed exactly. The story's written in such a way that you sort of feel like even though I know these two things aren't exactly compatible, they don't have to be, I guess.
Incompatible, yeah.
Yeah, like they don't have to be like one singular viewpoint, I can still try and reach this objective truth while, being like, okay, magic, I don't think that there's magic, and I think that there's this objective truth on who killed all these people, but sure, if you want to think that it was magic that killed all these people,
What Umineko is really trying to push for here, I feel, is that there are different ways of going about the process of reaching the truth, and that some are a lot more cold-hearted than others. Like, it's very easy to point the finger at someone and declare that you are the culprit, and you're going to jail, and you're a liar, and yada yada yada. But maybe there's a better way. You know, it's very complicated, and I'm not going to do it justice tonight. But
I think one thing that I'd like to add to that is, in the ending or in the letters that were sent out, it's usually not the question of who was it that did all of this. It's the question of what happened on Rokkenjima. You're not necessarily trying to find the culprit. You're just trying to figure out what it was that happened. So I think that's just a different way that you can spin it. So.
And so, like, sure, this was very much a side story for Umineko. How NJ's journey on, like, learning to accept others and, like, not just immediately demonize everybody. But that doesn't mean it's not relevant to the core, like, events on Rokkenjima. I feel like it's very relevant. It's kind of like almost Chiro-esque in how it's sort of guiding our thinking in a certain direction and challenging us to see Umineko in different light. And that's why episode 4 is great, guys.
All of this was actually just us being like, episode 4 is a good episode.
It sure is.
So, about the accident thing, because I like thinking about this.
Okay.
Because it's sort of one of the first things, because I remember in the first podcast, Aspie, you were sort of challenging us to think a bit about the end scroll and what we thought about that. And we couldn't really give any very satisfying answers to it, I guess, because, you know, there just doesn't really seem to be very much information given in that end scroll. But now that we've actually seen a lot of stuff from sort of post 1986, it feels like we should at least talk about sort of the accident and, you know, how come everybody was found dead.
Now, hold on. What do you mean post 1986?
Like post the events of Rokkenjima, I guess. You know,
What events of Rokkenjima?
Well, everybody being dead. Everybody like sort of turning up dead. Those events.
Okay. Except for Ava.
Except for Ava, yeah. Okay, so NotKyon and Soggy, I guess I'll pose this question to you. So in the end scroll for episode 1, it doesn't seem like there are any survivors. True?
Yeah.
Like it seems like the police the police report doesn't mention anybody surviving. We don't see anything there about Ava somehow living, and so we're sort of left a bit up in the air about, you know, what exactly the end result of episode 1 was. But it seems like everyone dies.
All we know is that 4 people are missing: Battler, George, Jessica, and Maria.
Yeah. So the question is it the case that the end scroll of episode 1 is only applicable to episode 1, I guess? And what I mean is, so what I mean is, in episode 3, it seems like Ava survives. But it's hard to know exactly because we're sort of faced with this lack of information from the end scroll of episode 1. And so we're sort of wondering, okay, so Ava seems to survive episode 3, and we don't think that anyone survives episode 1, so is the end result of all these different games different? And if so, how do we explain the message bottles?
Seraphitic, you brought forward the idea that episode 3 is the true episode. Is that correct?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, that episode 3 has like the true events, I guess, that precede the meta discussion.
Why do you think episode 3 is the true one?
End scroll for episode 1 says that the events of episode 1 were known through the message bottle that was received. However, we know that the message bottles were also received at the end of episode 3. From what we can tell from episode 4. I mean, this is presuming that the Anjay that we see in episode 4 is the Anjay that comes after episode 3, I guess?
Well, we haven't mentioned the second letter bottle.
I'm wondering if there's going to be a third and a fourth letter bottle that outline the events that took place in these game boards or not.
They did say that there's a possibility that there are more, because the other one turned up years and years after the first one.
That's true.
Devil's proof effective. I just want to pose one question, just throw some confusion into the wax. That means Ava's the culprit according to Seraphitic. Yeah? There is no room for question. Ava is the killer of NJ's family.
Why is that? I mean...
Because it's the result of episode 3.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of magical scenes in episode 3 that I don't think are actually happening. By the events of episode 3, I just mean what actually occurs on the island during episode 3 is sort of the true events of Rokkenjima.
Then what really happened, Seraphitic?
BRB just gonna go solve episode 3 right now.
Hold on. You're claiming that the events that really happened in episode 3 are what really happened in NJ's past.
Yes.
What is our basis for determining what really happened in episode 3?
I
want to kind of break your mind a little bit.
Darn it.
And this is gonna hurt. Now, up until now, we've been kind of treating Umineko as a mystery novel, and that it's solvable, and that it's a game, it's a puzzle. Episode 4 wants us to treat the events of Rokkenjima as a historical event in this universe. History does not follow the rules of the mystery genre. Does it?
No.
So in other words, we're not really detectives, we're just archaeologists in a sense?
Yeah, we're archaeologists in episode 4, aren't we? Now, it's very different then. Caraffine's saying I should stop confusing you guys. I'm being quite evil right now.
Are you kind of saying that if
I'm enjoying it.
I'm basically challenging the basis of your truth. Now, we've always treated these episodes as solvable mysteries, but is that the case with what really happened? Now, this is the first time we've actually asked this question, what really happened? Because up until now, they've just been individual game boards. Episode 4 introduces us to Rokkenjima as something that really happened, so we need to think about it in a new way. And this is where Umineko starts getting crazy.
Before it was so simple and straightforward.
Now, then Battler sees that Ava is the culprit of episode 3. So therefore she's the culprit, yeah? Or is that not the case? Is there more to this? Is everything about episode 3 questionable now?
Are you saying that we have to view episode 3 as if we were looking at an event in the past rather than from something we saw?
I'm not necessarily saying that. I'm just saying that you're very quick to assume that episode 3 is portraying the events of what really happened on Rokkenjima.
I mean... Okay, I think I understand what you're saying. Okay. I think I get what you're saying. So you're saying I'm being a little bit hasty in my assessment of episode 3.
It's fine to treat each episode as its own individual game board, as Battler does. And it is very much a game posed to Battler by Beatrice, sure. But when you start adding the layer of 1998 and NJ trying to figure out the truth of what quote-unquote really happened, things start becoming more hairy. And we need to treat that as... We need to basically treat NJ's investigations as gospel there. Because unless you want to accept that episode 3 is what really happened, then you need to start thinking maybe it's not. And if you start thinking that, you need to work backwards and go like, okay, what do we know about what really happened? And that's where we get to things like the accident.
Oh, okay, so, from episode 1, End Scroll, and from a lot of conversations in episode 4, we hear about this accident. There appears to be something that happened on Rakenjima that killed everybody except Ava, who was hiding in Kuwadorian for some reason. At least that's what she claims. Yeah. The end scroll of episode 1 doesn't directly talk about this accident. However, it does mention that there were the police came and found a bunch of, like, mangled body parts and pieces of people. We hear NJ and Okanogi and probably other people as well, but I can't remember exactly who, talk about this accident and that there was something that occurred on this island. And they sort of talk around the issue. They never actually give any real specific things that happened. It's always sort of vague, which is super annoying. And I love how Umineko does that to us, particularly like things with Battler's Sin. But there are a few clues that we have that might lead us to some conclusions, and I will give my conclusion after I've presented what I think are the main clues that we have. So,
Okay.
It appears like this accident, I mean, because it is called an accident, it should be something that could happen with no human interference. However, NJ seems to think like Ava was the cause of the accident. So it also should be something that could have been caused by a human, but doesn't necessarily have to be caused by a human. So that would rule out seemingly things like, I don't know, an earthquake or like a volcano or something like that. You know, there's something that happened that could have been human, but isn't necessarily. It also appears to be something that's localized. If Ava can get away from it by hiding in Kuwadorian, then she shouldn't have... then it can't be something that happened throughout the whole island, and instead only happened on the Rakenjima main mansion, or in that general vicinity. So like the mansion and the guest house, and possibly like maybe the chapel. I don't know. Let's see. Oh, also it would have to mangle body parts. So we see things like, you know, Maria's jaw, and, you know, a bunch of limbs that aren't identifiable and stuff. So the accident has to somehow cause all of the bodies to be, destroyed enough to be unidentifiable, and, you know, body parts go flying everywhere. So there were a few options that I thought of. So one of them was perhaps the house collapsing, like the mansion collapsing with everyone inside, but that didn't really seem like it would precisely mangle bodies to the extent that they seem to be. Like, you should probably be able to still identify the bodies to some degree, and the bodies should still be more or less together if the house collapsed. So it seems unlikely The conclusion that I came to was that the accident was an explosion, and that the explosion was set up such to look like an accident when in fact it was not. So it seems to fit. So it seems to fit all of the criteria that I've mentioned before, and I'd like to point out one other minor detail that we see right at the beginning of episode 1, wherein we see Kennen wheeling a big bag of fertilizer, actually several large bags of fertilizer, and it seems like he's got all this fertilizer, and yet we see the rose garden is not quite as good as it should be. The grown-ups remark on the fact that the rose garden was better last year. One of the things that you can do with fertilizer, if it's got ammonium nitrate in it, is you can create an explosive out of it by mixing it with various things, like things that you would power a boiler off of. And
let's not question how you know this.
Wikipedia. You can actually just look it up on Wikipedia. Just look up ammonium nitrate, and it'll pop right up. My theory is that an explosive was created out of the fertilizer, and was placed in the boiler room and set up so that it would look like the boiler was old and exploded, which is something that can happen. And this explosion was big enough to plausibly blow up all of the inhabitants of Rockinjima, except for Ava, who for some reason was hiding in Kuwadorian. We're not sure why. So yeah, that's my theory on what this accident was. And there's probably others, but I haven't been able to think of any. Mostly because I really like my explosion theory. So I'm gonna rest on my laurels.
I like that too. That fits pretty well.
So, the Chester sisters in this episode are here quite a bit. They're somewhat of a... At least they appear a lot more in this episode than they did in the last, at least to my memory. And,
so much to talk about.
Sorry. When you brought up Rosa, I remembered that I had this thought. When Rosa kind of freaks out and starts, yelling and screaming at Maria, she throws a rabbit against the wall. One of her little ceramic rabbits, of which she had 4. And if you go to the character list for episode 4, you'll notice there's a 4th Chester sister that we were never introduced to, but is shown there broken. Chester 556, apparently. And a thought I had is it possible that Chester sisters, and maybe other characters, not that I can figure out, are actually just personifications of objects? In this case, the Chester sisters being the ceramic toy bunnies that Maria had.
Mm.
That was a nice little laugh there, Aspie.
I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. But
alright, I'm going to give you a freebie. You're absolutely correct.
Oh.
It's a little mystery, so it doesn't really matter that I spoil that much. But yeah, that is the accepted answer, that rabbit is the one that Rosa destroyed, and that explains, because they do talk about it briefly in text, how one of their comrades was lost in battle recently.
Yeah. It was just so obvious, why is there this random rabbit here? Oh, wait a second. I got something right, that's good.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good work. There's lots of little mysteries like that
yeah.
Just kind of a side dish. And there's stuff like what did they find in the boat captain Kawabata's store?
I had something for that too. I was going to say Rosa ran a clothing company, right? Or something, just worked with fabric and things like that. I just thought it was possible they were trying to open up some sort of, testing out a kid's stuffed animal line, and that while they did mention that Rosa did make the Sakutara by hand, they couldn't say it was the only one ever made, and that kind of made me think that maybe Sakutara was one of those kind of lines or test lines of her company. I could be totally wrong on that, but it's just the thought I have. Considering that the scene that she tries to show Maria that she has Sakutara and she could bring it back was pretty soon after that, that's just how I connected those two things together. I have no idea.
That's actually a good idea. I hadn't thought about that.
I think that's probably the case. But I hadn't thought of it myself, so...
Yeah.
I mean, considering Anji got so worked up about it, and she was so connected to Maria and this idea of Sakutaro, seeing that would probably shake her as much as she was. So, yeah, that's all I have on that front. I'm hearing clapping.
Good job, Soggy. I agree completely. That was my theory too. That's what I think. And I'm glad that someone finally brought it up, because it was nagging me that like no one attempted to... Well, people did attempt to answer this, but no one came close to any sort of coherent answer. But at the very least, that is my answer.
Hey, I'm glad.
That's
You're very observant, Soggy. Good job.
Thank you.
that was really good. That was better than my theory. I'm calling it first.
Although
because that does explain why she can resurrect Sakutaro when supposedly
it was almost the next scene. It was within 20 minutes. It was just like, oh, wait a second.
There was a gap. There was a gap where she had to go to Rakengima and do all that stuff.
Well, yeah, but there was a gap of scenes I didn't really care about. So.
Oh yeah, I actually did remember seeing that. Like, apparently, yeah, you can actually see Sakutaro in the background of that CG in the PS3 version if you look really closely.
Really?
Oh.
Yep. There you go. That's as confirmation as you're gonna get, Suggy.
Hey.
Good job.
The two things I actually paid attention to, I got right. Yay! Although something that did bother me at the end, again regarding Anji, in the credits she's quoted as dead in 1998.
Oh, the elephant in the room.
And I was wondering, like, wait a second. When? How?
Yeah, what?
And then again, Sumadera Kasumi, she was not quoted as dead. So,
yeah, no.
What does that mean? I felt so confident in myself, and then just...
But yeah, okay. NJ's dead. That's kind of weird.
I feel like the question there is not how, but when.
Yeah, seriously. We know she died in 1986, but that's a broad period of time. Oh, sorry, 1998. My bad. Yeah, that's a broad period of time. Like, the entirety of episode 4 takes place in that. So was it at the end, or was it at the beginning?
I mean...
I think there's 2 points you could kind of take this from, and I don't know if I want to say this or someone else. Nobody? No one wants to tackle this?
Sorry, I think you're gonna have to take this one, Aspie.
It was such a subtle slap in the face, I didn't know what to do with it.
When and where did NJ die? That is the question. Now, like, we don't see her die, obviously. We know that she was originally going to Rakengima to die, but that was changed at some point. We know that she encountered Sumadera Kasumi and supposedly killed her with stakes, which is already pretty weird. Do you want to talk about that at all?
I mean, my interpretation at the time was just that Amakusa is sitting sort of out in the trees and just sort of sniping all the people one by one. I mean, it seems like he brought something with him to do that.
I considered it to be probable that he had probably, possibly arranged for some of his buddies to get there on their own, separately from the other guys, but that doesn't seem very likely to me either, because that requires a lot of contacts, and then it just doesn't make sense with why they would have to go on the boat ride in the first place then, but I mean, maybe there's more depth to his character than what I'm seeing. But it could also just be the case that the scene which we were shown was entirely a delusion, sort of like the last thing that Ange saw before she died. But
yeah.
I'm not saying that is the case. I'm just kind of bringing that up as a possibility.
I'm just expressing that when I first saw episode 4, I was going through all these different possibilities myself, like you guys are now. I considered the sniper theory, I considered the delusion theory, maybe she really did commit suicide. There's a few things here. What do you think about the whole thing about Ava just appearing at the end there? Any thoughts on that?
Bullshit.
Bullshit?
Yeah, it's just, obviously. I was just like, really? Wait a second,
She's
what?
kind of dead.
Yeah.
Very dead.
I mean, I sort of tied it back to my theory back in episode 3 that like witches sort of correspond to sort of emotions and whatever, perhaps.
Yeah.
So, you know, Ava sort of being this malicious force, or sorry, Ava Beatrice being sort of this malicious force, I was sort of like, yeah, no, I'm not surprised that she reappeared.
Well, yeah, that was kind of like hammered into your face there. They weren't very subtle about it.
Yeah.
She is the Black Witch, which represents, like, malice growing in people's hearts.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I was excited when she came up, but I wasn't necessarily surprised exactly. So.
But do you have any sort of interpretation there from a mystery perspective?
From a mystery perspective? I don't know.
I thought there was one thing that was particularly odd about that scene, and I'm not going to say what it is. Yeah. But yeah, I'm not going to say it, don't worry. I'm just going to say that there is something odd about that scene. I would encourage people to reread it and see if they can figure out what it is. There's something not quite right about it that lead me to think about another possibility. Anyway, I'll leave you with that little teaser. So, there's one more theory we can propose on top of all of this. And that's to say that Anjay jumped off a skyscraper and died.
Oh, that's
yeah.
what I thought happened?
Yeah.
I mean, it's possible. They did mention that there was some weird catch in it, but let's be honest, that's...
And that we're just seeing a dream or something, and like a fragment where NJ survives by some miracle. And there's all different ways you can interpret this with the metaphysics of Umineko, but it really does remind me of that one, thing in episode 3 where, like Vigilia is killed but actually still walking around.
Well, can't you have your cake and eat it too with this interpretation? I mean, if the end scroll is for like the end results of episode 4, then like maybe Anjay of episode 4 does die in 1998.
What does that mean? That didn't take place in 1998.
If the Anjay that we see throughout episode 4 is the Anjay of episode 3, and the end scroll at the end of episode 4 is sort of, the end scroll of episode 4, then maybe the Anjay of episode 4 is in fact like she does actually die jumping off the skyscraper or whatever. However, the Anjay of episode 3 doesn't die on the island or jumping off the skyscraper, possibly.
Yeah, this is kind of getting into weird metaphysics, but I think what you're getting at is sort of a multiverse theory, where there's an infinite number of potential universes, and in one of them, Anjay jumps off the building and dies.
Yeah.
Of course, we're never shown that, but yeah. Now, I just want to say here that the metaphysics of Umineko is to this day the biggest topic of debate in the fandom. So, look forward to debating that more as time goes on, because there's really no consensus on how it all works, but there are some accepted theories, and I don't want to talk about that too much, but yeah. Basically, you need to decide whether or not we're going from a multiverse perspective or more of a unifying perspective, and there's all different ways of thinking about it, but it's half the fun trying to form your own interpretation of how time and space works in Umineko's universe. It's time to talk about the actual game board of episode 4, because that's a thing that kind of got thrown in.
Just a little side story, really.
PictoShark absolutely loved it. I think the consensus here is not too positive.
I wasn't
episode 4 was
particularly
my favorite
pleased with
episode, so...
Carafine. Yes, Cross does punch a goat.
The whole Virgilia scene where, like, with the failure flag or death flag counter thing, I was groaning at that.
Yeah.
That was my favorite part of all of the Chunibyo nonsense.
I mean, episode 4 was my favorite episode, but that might have been my least favorite scene of the entire series.
Thank
so far.
you, Soggy. Thank you so much. I'm so glad somebody else agrees with me.
It's remarkable how different this game board plays out to the previous 3. It's completely different. Like, it's just like all the magic and stuff just feels like something out of a slapstick fantasy comedy, less than kind of like what we've been getting up until now, where it's a lot more character driven and actually kind of emotional. Now it's just fucking punching goats.
Episode 4, punching goats.
Now, that's not to say there's not a mystery here. It's just a very, I guess, watered down mystery. Battler is confined to a small space for the entire episode, and everything happens through phone calls, and then he gets to investigate after that. Did you guys have any sort of theories of how this might work? There's the whole thing about Kinzo appearing and everyone acknowledging him as Kinzo, and all that kind of red truth stuff was a bit weird. But what do you make of the mystery of this episode?
Well, regarding Kinzo, they pointed out that it was more of a transfer of title, so you could title someone as being someone without that person actually being there. In other words, somebody could recognize that Kinzo was there, but Kinzo being more of a name that you could apply. So I guess that's one of the things, but regarding most of the mysteries that took place in this episode, a lot of that you can probably just discount because of how magical it was in nature and how much of it wasn't seen from the perspective of Battler. Now, I might be
get phone calls from his relatives explaining in detail everything that's happening. How can we reconcile that?
He does get phone calls, yes.
Fakes?
I don't know. I don't think that there was a red truth that stated that those phone calls were real. I'm not relying on them being fake either. I just don't have a way to reconcile them as taking place, because a lot of people can say different things under duress, under any number of circumstances, even if it's somebody that you love or you think that you understand.
But the stories all match up. That's one thing that really, was a thorn in Battle 3, reasoning there.
Yeah. I mean, Mimsy was... I think it was Mimsy that pointed out, it's actually weirder that it lines up. Most of the time witnesses don't have stories that line up very well. Whereas these ones seem to line up pretty... sort of scarily well. I don't know.
I can think of 3 possible solutions.
I mean, my particular solution was that, in terms of phone calls that Battler's getting, he's getting them from someone who's just mimicking the voices of people. That was my thought. Mostly due to the pretty much, it seems like to me at least, impossibility of Jessica's phone call, and how much Kyrie's phone call clashes with Kyrie's personality, I suppose. Kyrie always seemed like a very, logical, very clear-minded, someone who wouldn't stand for, magic. She wouldn't accept magic. And here she's telling Battler, if you see, a demon or something, like just accept it, just believe. And I'm like, that's nothing like what Kyrie would say. This is some bull right here.
That's a consistent message that comes up between all the phone calls, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jessica says the same thing. Like, they're not human, just accept that you can't win against them, and they're just believe in them. And I'm like, this sounds like someone's just trying to convince Battler of something, and it doesn't sound like what the characters would actually say exactly. Yeah.
See, why would they even bother to tell him that? I mean, if he's gonna die anyway.
Yeah.
So we can rule out honest testimonies then, can't we? Let's simplify this a bit. The people are being coerced by a culprit into telling Battler that a witch exists.
Yes.
Is that what you're getting at?
Yes.
Okay, that sounds a bit simpler. We'll put it in human terms now. Awesome. So that's one possibility I definitely considered. Like, maybe they're being held at gunpoint. It's like, you tell Battler that a witch exists. But even then, like...
What's the motive of that?
That's another question, isn't it? Like, what is the motive of making Battler believe? There's another theory, which is completely Battler-tier, and I think you've all considered it at one point. What if everyone's just fucking with him?
That's my favorite explanation, honestly. Everybody.
It's like they're all just playing a prank.
Literally everybody on the island just hazing Battler. It's like, you've been away for 6 years, we're just gonna screw with you for these couple of days.
I love it. It's much nicer, but then you need to consider that there were corpses, so something must have gone wrong if that's the case.
It's just a prank, bro.
It's just a prank, bro!
Like,
that's three different things.
I'm just sort of envisioning, like maybe the accident was an accident. Like, they were screwing with Battler and then something got out of hand and just... everybody's dead.
But the
That
way,
would be...
it's hard to think of all those murders and that crime.
That would be so anticlimactic.
Okay, there was a scene where Battler's existence was denied. And then readily reaffirmed by the Red that he is, in fact, Kinzo's grandchild. But, or was it Blue? Either way. We were then presented with a truth that Asumu is not Battler's mother. He just couldn't say it in Red. And this is especially weird, isn't it?
I mean, I think there's only one other person it could be.
What do you think?
I mean, Kyrie. I mean, they talked about the whole thing last episode about how they had the same due dates or something. I mean, I don't know how it happened, but I'm just assuming that maybe she actually had the kid or something like that. I have no idea, but she seems like the only other person I could think of. And considering that, Anja's Battler's little sister, and we know that her mother is
and the
Kyrie,
birth supposedly happened at the same time, too, don't forget.
Yeah.
There was one other possibility. I mean, the Kyrie one is probably the most likely, but there was one other possibility that I thought of. And that is that Battler is, this is starting to sound like, who was it? Pike Rob's theory, sort of, maybe. Anyway, but the idea is that Battler is actually the bastard son of Kinzo somehow, and that he was raised by Asumu. Because I think one of the Reds does say that Ushiromiya Battler is
Ushiromiya Asumu's son.
Yeah, and that was said in Red. However, Battler couldn't say that he was born from Asumu, right?
Yes.
So the conclusion that I thought of was, okay, so he's her son, but not biologically. So possibly adopted, maybe? I don't know.
Didn't they say that? At least
Like-
it was either that she couldn't repeat it or that this was said and read, but that he was Ushinomiya Kinzo's grandson, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was said.
But
See, I'm not sure. It's
there are a few possibilities here, and one of them is especially interesting. I think we talked about it, Seraphitic. Was it you I talked about it with? Or it might have been Picto. I'm not sure.
It might have been Picto. What was it? I would remember it.
Two battlers. Does that ring any bells?
I think that might have been Picto.
That might have been Picto.
So I guess you're gonna have to take
I
this
have
one.
to speak in for him. He came up with a very interesting theory that there are actually two battlers. There's the battler we know, and there's the battler that was born from a sumu, who is the legitimate battler. And he reckons that there is an illegitimate battler walking around, and he is the battler that turns up to Rock Enjima, and he is not the same battler that was there 6 years ago. He reckons it's an imposter, a doppelganger of some kind, and that this battler may well be like the culprit, is actually what he was going for.
So he's sort of integrating Beatrice's argument, like that battler isn't really battler.
Yeah, kind of denying that.
So does he also
And
think
it also
that
explains why
that
battler can't remember the sin, because it's not the same person.
does he think that battler is still the grandson of Kinzo?
I think that part was a bit hairy. Like, it was definitely a theory in development, but I just thought it was really interesting. A battler culprit theory. Oh, I dig my teeth into that.
But doesn't Beatrice say, like, of course you're not me?
Mm-hmm. Oh,
That-
he does. She does
is that
say
one
that.
red?
So then Beatrice would need to be another person for that theory to work. There's lots of like little red troops that are just kind of thrown in that can actually lead to some interesting analysis and reasoning. Like the whole little troop
See-
of NJ saying that she is Battler's little sister. That's interesting, because they're like, well, biologically they're not.
Well,
Unless they are.
I mean, if you assume that Rudolph is the father of both of them, then I mean, there you could sort of get away with that. The language is a bit. I could almost agree with the two battlers thing, but I'm not sure the battler is the culprit. And there is one other problem. At the beginning of episode 1, battler sees Kumasawa and says, this takes me back, or whatever. He says something like that. So he evidently remembers Kumasawa and sort of the mackerel thing and stuff like that. Like, he remembers certain things from 6 years ago.
That's true.
So,
Like, I remember him saying that Maria was, I think, 3 years old last time that he saw her, and he didn't have any way of knowing that she was 9 now. That there just had to be something he knew.
So there is definitely things he remembers. If you want to go far enough, you could probably reason out that it's stuff that he obtained, information he obtained elsewhere. But it's kind of a rabbit hole.
he's been
If
brainwashed.
you want to go down that rabbit hole, it's quite deep.
The two
Yeah,
battlers
it's
were
very
working
appealing.
together.
There are a lot of people that like battler culprit theories. It makes for some interesting storytelling, and that's where the whole black battler thing kind of came from, which you may have seen around at Carafene's avatar. It's kind of a fanon that
But
has been adopted into like actual like art and stuff. It's really cool.
I guess we're gonna have to get rid of that one axiom that battler's perspective can be trusted. Then, right?
Yeah, basically. So that's why I mean it's a rabbit hole if you want to go down it. But anyway, now something we kind of skimmed over that is kind of really important that we need to draw attention to. Battler made a sin, and that was first presented in this episode. And supposedly that sin is indirectly a cause for everything that happened, all the murders and everything.
One of the causes, right?
Did he not send a chain recommendation?
That sounds like the beginning of a horror film.
That's my new favorite theory. Thank you, Soggy. He didn't send a chain mail and everyone died.
Oh, dear. I like it.
That's so good. Oh my god. I haven't heard that one. Okay.
I think Soggy gets MVP of this podcast.
Holy shit. You've done great for your first podcast, Soggy.
Thank you.
Okay. And now, the other thing, before we jump into everything, is the final mystery of,
Are we just not going to talk about the sin?
Don't worry, we'll get to that. I'm just drawing attention to it.
Okay.
And the last thing is that at the very end, Beatrice proposes the final question to Battler, which is... I can't remember it verbatim, but basically, he is the only one there. Everyone else is dead. No one else could have interfered. There was no humans there was no animals that could have interfered. Nobody from the outside. And yet, someone is here and will kill him. I think that's the basic gist of it. I might be wording that slightly wrong. You can check the official translation for all of that. And then the question is, who am I? Now, that's Beatrice's final riddle proposed at the end of the episode, which is never answered, and that's left open for us to discuss. With all that said, who is Beatrice? What is Battler's sin? I want to hear your thoughts, guys. Now, this is the fun part. NotKyon, do you have any thoughts here?
I don't know who Beatrice is, and I have no idea what his sin would be. That felt like it was introduced at the last minute, so... Yeah. Unfortunately, I do not.
It's kind of the final push to get you to really think about the core mystery of Umineko. It's unfortunate that you haven't had time to think of a theory yet. But I guess we'll move on to Soggy then. Did you have any thoughts here, Matt?
Not really any. I mean, I thought kind of that maybe the sin... He said that it couldn't have just been leaving the family. Well, I mean, it's some possibility that it could have been that through some form of, maybe leadership or something. I have no idea. But, no. Yeah, I'm just gonna say no.
Are we all leaning on Seraphitic here? To carry us through this raid?
Okay. Okay. So we'll start with the with who Beatrice is then.
All right, let's hear it.
Okay. Good lord. Okay, should I propose? Should I just go with my unified servant theory thing and just throw that out there
Go
as sort of
for it.
a fun. Okay. Here goes. All right. So, what if Canon and Shannon were actually the same person? So, I'd like to bring up some possible evidence of this. Let's consider sort of the premises that PictoShark sort of put out in the forum, that Battler's perspective can be basically trusted. There's some nuance to it, but basically Battler's perspective is pretty trustworthy. And the Red Trues are trustworthy and all that. So Battler never actually sees Canon and Shannon together in the same room at the same time, as far as I can tell. There may be a point where he does, but I haven't been able to find it. So, at the very least, there aren't any particular scenes that could hardcore deny this theory that I've come up with.
I think what we're really interested to know is what led you to that in the first place.
Okay, so to do that, you need to sort of backtrack a bit to Battler's sin. So, evidently, this Beatrice is able to remember what Battler's sin is. she remembers what Battler was like 6 years ago, and like remembers this particular action, assuming it's an action. It could be something sort of a little bit more vague than that, but the particular character who seems to remember sorry, excuse me, who seems to remember Battler the best from 6 years ago was actually Shannon. It's actually stated twice that she remembers what Battler was like 6 years ago. One time in episode 2, when Shannon, George, and Jessica are talking about Battler and Maria getting along really well at the airport. Shannon actually she says she remembers that Battler hasn't changed in 6 years, and that he was, really energetic and lively 6 years ago. And then again in episode 3, Shannon and Battler, George, Jessica, and Maria are all down at the beach talking, and they're talking about Battler and what he was like 6 years ago. And they were like, oh, can't believe how much Battler's grown and all this sort of stuff. And Shannon's, and George and Jessica were like, oh, I wouldn't have recognized Battler, or I don't remember much about 6 years ago and stuff. And Shannon says, I remember what Battler was like perfectly well, and and George says that Shannon has a really good memory and all this sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. And in particular, Shannon quotes this one thing that one super embarrassing middle school thing that Battler said about when he comes back, he's going to be riding on a white horse and all that sort of stuff, and see you again sort of thing. And it's great and wonderful, and isn't it funny? However,
I like how in the manga version they translated that to Italian. It just instead of "see you again," it was "hasta la vista." Was that Italian?
So, I mean, hasta la vista.
That's
I think
Spanish, isn't it?
That's Spanish.
Fuck.
Yeah, that's Spanish.
Shit. Right. Good, I corrected myself. It's okay.
So, where was I? Yeah, so Shannon seems to be the one who remembers Battler best. So it seems likely to me, at least, that Shannon is the one who remembers Battler's sin. Whether she's Beatrice or not, I'll get to that in a second. So, at the very least, it seems likely if anyone is holding a grudge or anything like that about Battler's sin, it would be Shannon. Because she seems to be the only person who remembers anything about that. About Battler 6 years ago. Mm-hmm. Now, why canon as well? Well, mostly it revolves around my solution for episode 1, which I think is sort of the accepted solution on the forums right now, that canon was the perpetrator of episode 1. And sort of the details of that I'll just sort of gloss over, but basically, the first Twilight, pretty easy for canon to commit. Second Twilight, you sort of have to assume that what you see in episode 1 during that, like canon running with Kumasawa with the wire cutters and whatever, all that sort of stuff, is not really what happened, and canon just cut the chain, killed Eva and Hideyoshi, and sort of
painted
that's
on the
sort
door.
of what happened. Yeah, that whole deal. And then Kenan's death. He fakes his death. Kinzo's already dead, so he's just been chucked into the furnace. And then Kenan fakes his death along with the help of Nanjo, and Nanjo puts the letter inside the study to sort of get people out of the study. Kenan kills all the people in the parlor except for Maria, and then Kenan kills Natsuhi afterwards, something like that. So this seems like a pretty good theory. It's nice, simple, clean. However, it basically ignores Shannon, and so it's like, okay, well, Seraphitic, you've proposed that Shannon is the one who remembers the sin, and we know that the sin is at least in some way, the cause of this whole ordeal. So, how do we connect the two? Well, if Canon and Shannon are the same person, then we have a very easy connection. Canon is, either Canon is sort of a extra personality of Shannon, or vice versa, though it seems more likely that Canon is an extra personality. And that sort of two-personalitied character is the one that is responsible for all the murder and mayhem that goes on. Now, there are quite a number of issues with this theory. Most notably, the issues don't actually stem from anything particularly hard, like any hard evidence that I can find. It's mostly to do with people's sort of how they talk about Shannon and Canon, as well as the romance between George and Shannon, and sort of the fledgling romance between Jessica and Canon. Because it seems like those like people talk about Canon and Shannon as if they're different people, and in order for Jessica to have a crush on Canon, that would also mean that she has a crush on Shannon, and unless Jessica doesn't know about this, which I find incredibly unlikely, there's some serious problems with this theory in that respect. I don't know. What do you guys think? That this is sort of like the bare bones of this theory, so feel free to add or take away. Carafene's asking if I've read Mimsy's post on episode 4. Yeah, I did read that. He said it was an interesting theory. I'll read it again. Just give me a sec. Guys, what do you think about it?
I think it opens up an interesting possibility, but I haven't necessarily subscribed to that theory myself yet either. Like I said, I don't have any specific objection to it, but I'm of the impression that the answer might be different.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
That's more or less what I'm at as well. It's a fun theory, but
Mimsy does raise some very interesting points though. Kind of bringing back the whole like furniture angst. You could kind of interpret that as something more of a identity angst. Mimsy brings up the point in the forum that perhaps Canon's biological gender is female, and that's why Canon feels like he doesn't have the body to love Jessica. It's not about being furniture, but it's about his gender.
Yeah, I think I vaguely remember asking you, Aspie, or was it you? Maybe it was Carafene, but I remember asking, like, could Canon be female?
Pictoshark loves the Canon is female theory.
Yeah, I think I brought that up at some point. But yeah, no, it's the whole thing is not necessarily contradicted. It's just unlikely. But it is a way to unify the idea that Shannon is the one who remembers what Battler was like, but Canon could be the killer. So
like, it depends how you want to interpret this.
Take it for what you will.
You're thinking that this person, let's call them Sayo, to use Shannon's real name, is going around putting on a dress when they want to be Shannon, changing into the other clothes when they want to be canon and kind of just playing two people and having everyone fooled.
Well, I mean, I don't think you could fool everyone. That's the thing. That's what's got me confused, and sort of making me think that that isn't the case. Because, like, I mean, let's be honest. There's no way that you could fool the servants. Like, the servants would know. And, like, unless this person is somehow, like, a magician, like, there's no way that they could fool. There's no way that they could fool their employers. Like, that couldn't happen. So, yeah, it seems unlikely to me that this theory is correct. However, there's nothing really that I can bring up that would just kill the theory. It just seems sort of a bunch of circumstantial evidence that makes it less and less likely.
What do you think, Soggy?
I really don't know what to say about this one.
It's pretty out there.
I mean, it's possible. Yeah. I mean, the idea of characters being the same person isn't that far removed from what I think is possible, but this one in specific, I don't know what to say about it.
Yeah, it's more an idea to toy with, and possibly, possibly it's less of a theory about, maybe, maybe Ken and Shannon are the same, but maybe we should just think maybe certain characters are the same. Like, it may not be Canon and Shannon, but maybe there's another pair that Battler never sees together. I don't know. I've been that's sort of what I thought up like a little bit before the podcast, and I don't know. I haven't had time to check that, but anyway, that's just some thoughts.
Do you want to push through?
As for like the specifics of what the sin was, I did think that maybe what Battler said, the whole when I come back, I'll be on a white horse, like that whole thing. I thought something like that might be what that sin was. I'm not sure, because that particular sort of thing seems very kind of manga or anime-esque. The whole childhood friend promise to marry, that whole deal. It would seem like, if supposing Shannon took that seriously, and then Battler comes back and says he can't remember anything. I don't know. If someone was unhinged already to some degree, I could possibly see that causing a murder spree. Maybe. That's just what I thought.
To overfill a bucket.
Yeah, something like that.
I mean, it was stated that Battler's sin is one of the causes of this tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't the cause. She
Yeah.
didn't say that.
Mm-hmm. And, I mean...
In fact, even
possible.
NJ thinks that her rejecting Maria was a cause of the tragedy, which is interesting.
Yeah. Oh, I had some stuff about that as well, but we have only limited time. But yeah, I thought that maybe that was the sin. I mean, Aspie, you said that we have enough evidence to work out what the sin is, and that's about the only thing that I can think of that was specifically talking about what Battler was like, or what he did or said 6 years ago. There's probably some other stuff, and
there isn't a lot.
I'm looking forward to a reread. Yeah. I'm looking forward to a reread so that I can check to see if there's other things. But that was what came to mind for Battler's Sin. Okay. So possibly it's romantic between him and Sayo.
It would fit with all the importance of love in the story of Umineko. In episode 2, it was especially...
Without love, it cannot be seen.
In episode 2, it was especially relevant, where, like, love is a single element, and, like, pretty much, it was the big defining theme of episode 2. But yeah, it definitely fits for me. I don't see any contradictions there, as that being a potential sin that he committed that helped contribute to the murder spree. Now then, we've gone this far. Why don't we finish the fight? I want you to answer every Twilight with this culprit theory.
Bombs.
Okay, well I'll at least attack the chapel. So let's see. Beatrice is trying to contradict sort of what Battler was saying at in episode 2, right? She says something about oh yeah, that was it. That the key didn't change hands. Yeah, there it is. Thanks, Carafian. That the key didn't change hands until Rosa opened it that morning, right? So what Battler was suggesting in episode 2 was that the key might have left Maria's possession, and then the chapel opened and everything like that, and then returned to Maria. I think that was what Battler was saying in episode 2. So Beatrice counters by saying it didn't change hands. So there's a few ways that you could maybe attack this, but the one that I thought of was that perhaps Rosa opened the chapel a lot earlier than we originally think. So we see her go and get the key at about 6 in the morning or so from Maria's bag. However, it's possible that you can get around the red by saying that Rosa went and got the key from Maria much earlier that morning, like maybe 1 or 2 in the morning or something like that, and opened up the chapel, and that's how all the bodies got into the chapel. And so that way you've fulfilled the red, and everything appears as we see in episode 2. You could also potentially say that Maria opened up the chapel, because then the key would not have changed hands. But that's a different matter. So there's at least the chapel done, I think, without the use of small bombs. Does anybody else have...
I don't have any objections to that.
The rest of episode 2 seems pretty... It sits pretty happily in Canon's lap for the most part. He could kill Jessica. He could also do the servant room. And then there's the issue of Natsuhi's room. Natsuhi's room could be beaten. I suggested some ways, that it was sort of a murder-suicide, or that
We're gonna be here for a while.
The wording could be construed such that, it could, the room could have been locked afterwards.
Yeah, we already proposed those 2 answers in episode 2, and I think that all holds up now.
Yeah, I think what I said in episode 2 still more or less holds. The servant room's a little bit weird because I don't remember the details of that terribly well.
Well, if you can,
but I think everything else
if you follow
sits
through
fairly
if Canon and Shannon are the same person, that creates some interesting implications. That the culprit was standing right next to them when they made that claim about magic.
Mm-hmm. Which would, it would give you perhaps some reason to believe why why they couldn't, exactly, just say what happened, because they have the culprit standing right next to them,
Mm-hmm. That all adds up. Next game, episode 3, First Twilight. The chain of closed rooms.
This one is harder, for this theory. But again, Battler never sees Kennen's body, and both he and Shannon actually sort of have their little coming back to life business, which
they do later in the episode.
Yeah. So I don't know. One of the interesting things is that the grown-ups would then have to be lying about finding Cannon's body in the chapel for this theory to be okay, which seems.
This is definitely one of the more interesting ones, especially this might be a roadblock to your theory.
Yeah, it kind of is. I mean, you would have to assume that the let's see.
Oh.
Yeah, no, you would have to assume that the grown-ups are lying, basically.
Do you have
for this
to?
theory to be okay. I mean, unless you can conjure up another body for Cannon and Shannon. I mean, we've already said that Nanjo is lying in episode 1. So, if we just have Nanjo investigate the bodies, then, there's not a whole lot of problems in that regard. The main problem occurs because it seems like there's this extra body that sort of comes out of nowhere, which we can technically have if Cannon and Shannon are the same person, because we've only said that there can't be more than 17 people. But if Cannon and Shannon are the same person, then there's 16 people, and we can actually put in a 17th
person X theory. Hey.
I hate how this just keeps coming up. It just keeps reappearing no matter what we do. Beatrice just keeps denying more and more people, and we just keep coming up with new ways to throw in more people, and it just gets worse and worse.
I think there's a simpler solution there.
Oh, I mean... Oh. Okay, what is it, Aspie? What's the simpler
I'm
solution?
not telling you. I mean...
Thanks, Carafian.
Thanks.
Well, you're making some assumptions here. Look.
Well, okay. Here's an idea. They see Shannon's body in the parlor. They leave. They go through all the other rooms, and they see Cannon's body in the chapel. I think that one's the last one.
Yep.
In between that time, Shannon, who is not actually dead, gets up and runs to the chapel, opens it up, and enters somehow, and pretends to be Cannon. Is that?
That's kind of what I was thinking, yeah.
Yeah. The problem is, how did she get into the chapel? Because the key to the chapel is on Kinzo. So,
Master
how
key.
did that work? The master key doesn't open the chapel, though.
Doesn't it?
Nope. And besides that, the master keys are all scattered throughout the other servants and everything like
Cannon's
that, and they're
body.
collected one by one.
Oh, no, it was collected.
There's only one found on Shannon's body. Well, okay.
That is interesting, yeah.
Yeah, hold on. Well, Nanjo is the one, I think, who searches Shannon's body, possibly. I think that was correct. So, it's possible he only pulled one key off. But we still have the issue of the chapel not opening for a master key. I don't know. I feel like this could be solvable, but I don't have a solution at the moment.
Right. I think we'll concede there as one one red stake in your theory. If you can pull it out, then who knows? Alright, we'll move on to the next Twilight, though. Next Twilight was Rosa and Maria in the garden.
This one... Well, I mean... If we want to attribute everything to this Canon Shannon Sayo person, we could... I mean, this one's pretty easy. It's not a locked room. You know, this person went out, knocked Rosa onto the fence, and then strangled Maria. Alternatively, we could say that Ava did it. That doesn't necessarily contradict our theory. Like I said in episode 3, we can have multiple murderers and sort of one central murderer and sort of a random person doing the murders. So it could be Ava to keep Rosa silent, or it could be this Sayo person who goes out and kills them for the second Twilight. I don't know. Either of those work, I think.
Yeah, that's valid. It's a pretty open one, so you can throw in anything you want there. Alright, the next one was the three in the mansion.
I mean, this one, again, no locked room, pretty easy. Right? I mean...
We've talked at great length about, like, the possibilities of this one, and, like, the whole thing about Hideyoshi not actually being dead is kind of interesting, too.
Yeah.
But, like, yeah, you can pierce this open very easily. If you want to start getting into motives, it gets a bit more complicated. I think that's a general theme of episode 3, is that the motives are more interesting from a motive perspective than they are of a how done it. Because the how done it is extremely simple. They just went and killed him. So yes, sure. You could paint Sayo as a culprit of this. No problem.
Yeah, I'm sort of glossing over motive for the sake of time. So
yeah, that's fine. Yeah. So next episode. Wait, no, we've still got one. We've still got a bit more. So there was the death of what was it?
George?
No, before him, there was Kraus and Natsuhi found in the arbor.
I think I speculated before that Kraus and Natsuhi could have been sort of coerced out and killed. I think what Badler proposes about Ava killing them is perhaps not exactly correct, but it's possible Ava kicked them out of the house, and then they were met with Sayo, and then Sayo killed them. So that's an option, I guess, maybe?
Okay. And then we, of course, have the George and Cannon coming back from the life, which is...
Whew.
Interesting.
This particular bit gets more interesting with this theory, anyway. So, at the very least,
First
we
off,
could say,
George
okay,
jumped
maybe...
out the window, yeah?
I mean, it seems like he doesn't...
Guess how somehow.
Yeah. I mean, if we're saying that Nanjo is a, you know, the
Magic,
fun...
he flew out.
Like the... Yeah, the, Would he jump? Why would he jump out a window? I don't know. It was fun. There you go. Thank you, NotKyon. So, yeah, so basically, George went out the window perhaps to avoid other people, and then Nanjo came along and locked the window behind him. It works. I'm just using Battler's bit for that particular part of the mystery. He goes over, finds Sayo not actually dead, and Sayo is unfortunately forced to kill George to cover up, perhaps, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. That's very interesting for your theory, though. That maybe George encounters Shannon Sayo, and something goes down.
Yeah. All right.
And then we have the canon appearing before Jessica, who's blind, and guiding her to safety.
Okay. Well, I mean, we have still the idea that if Shannon, Sayo, Canon, whatever, is all the same person, then they evidently pretended to be they killed Nanjo and pretended to be Canon and took Jessica somewhere. And then you have the whole. I mean, throughout the whole thing, we've had this Canon is dead, Canon is dead, Canon is dead type thing. So what we've been saying is that that's sort of a metaphorical death, where the character of Canon dies, as in like the personality Canon dies.
Like Mimsy sort of brought up this idea that might be a Vika's truth, where sure, no one can be Canon. Canon is dead, but that's because Canon doesn't exist. Yeah,
he's just a personality of this Sayo person. So, Canon is dead in as much as Canon is, just a persona and is killed off by this Sayo. So, yeah. That would be a way to get around all of this mess that is the red web. So, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so this is interesting, isn't it? Can you answer the red web easily enough?
I don't know. I mean, Beatrice never actually contradicts Battler's theory about, person being alive and then killing Nanjo and then dying afterwards. So that still could be a possible solution. And I mean,
I think it works. You've effectively said that everyone's dead, but then if it's just a persona, then it works out.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of been an interpretation that we've been going with for a while. That
Battler did propose this. He actually said that Jessica has like an alternate personality that did it, and but then Beatrice is like, Jessica had no influence on the murder. She didn't deny this general idea, though.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this particular interpretation of so and so is dead has sort of been kicking around since episode 2 with the whole canon is dead thing for the second Twilight. So I mean, it's nothing new exactly. So we'll say that the red web can be solved like that. I wish that there was a better solution at the moment.
And I
don't have any specific objection.
Yeah.
And I think
I really like.
Sorry.
I really like the red web, and I want to say that there's probably a much more beautiful solution to it. So I'm not going to say that I have the solution with this, just that it's a possible blue. So I'm saying it in blue. This is what could have happened, but I don't think it's actually the truth.
And I feel like episode 4 is pretty simple enough. Just this person went around and killed everyone. And supposedly was acknowledged as Kinzo, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, the way it's worded, couldn't it be that what they saw was Kinzo's dead body? I think
I was thinking
I
that
mentioned
too.
Something about
Good pickup.
Yeah.
I was thinking that was quite possible. They just threw in Kinzo's dead body, so sure, everyone acknowledged Kinzo in that room.
Yeah. It's like, yep, nope, Kinzo exists and is present right there. He's dead though, but there he is. So yeah, that's a way to interpret those red truths as well. without having to go with the whole, the title Kinzo passes on to somebody. Though Lambda never actually denies the idea that Kinzo could be a title. She says it's not true about canon, but she never says it's not true about Kinzo. So the idea isn't dead. It's just I don't know. There's another way of interpreting it without that idea. So yeah.
And the last question: who or how was Battler killed at the end of episode 4?
Oh, explosion? Maybe? Small bombs? Big bombs?
Explosion?
I was thinking you'd go with that.
In between
going
bombs?
back to the accident theory.
Yeah. My idea is that Battler died from the accident, but,
But I am here and I will kill you.
Yeah, that bit bothers me. Because she definitely does say that I'm here. So we'll give me some more time to think about that, and I'll post something on the forums.
Wish Picto was here. He had a good
We're
theory
almost
for
done.
that. I wonder if I should just speak to Picto at this point.
Oh no, go ahead with Picto's theory, because I think I remember his being pretty good.
So Picto was kind of similar to yours. He proposed that there was some kind of disaster, probably explosion, that killed Battler. Maybe somehow this culprit is the cause of it. You could reason that out however you like. And that's how they killed Battler. As for the I am here part, the culprit's corpse was right in front of him when it happened.
So I am not alive in here. I am just.
Yeah.
So sort of like the Kinzo answer.
Yeah, I mean, he already said that he's the only one alive on the island.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that fits.
Yeah, that's a pretty good. I'll go with that. That one's not bad.
Well, boys, we've proposed an answer to almost every Twilight.
Yeah.
Who's to
Good
know?
Lord.
Who's to know if they're correct or not? But you did it. Good job, Seraphitic.
Pachi, pachi, pachi.
Do I get my cup of tea and Ronave's cookies now?
Sure, I'll get you some tea. But I'm not going to give you the answer you desire. You have a whole 4 episodes to read before you get that. I'm really looking forward to see how your reasoning holds up in these later episodes, because...
Oh, it's gonna die. I already know that. I already know. They're gonna show something where, like, Shannon and Cannon appear before Battler at the same time, and I'm just gonna go, well, okay. That was fun while it lasted.
Oh, man. I'm very excited. I feel like a lot of the stuff we've addressed today will be lampshaded in future episodes in one way or another. So it's gonna be fun. This is I'm just laughing so much, I'm sorry. I'm very happy.
It never ends.
I'm very happy with this these 4 episodes of our podcasts. You guys have been the best witch hunters I could hope for. Soggy in particular, like, you didn't have an answer for like the culprit or anything, but you had lots of really good insight into the smaller mysteries that other people weren't able to tackle.
They were very good.
Thank you for that.
I really liked them.
And NotKyon helped.
Yay!
Yay! The true hero.
Oh my god. But yeah, seriously, you guys are amazing, and especially to like the people who are on past episodes, like Rabbler and Yerian. Were there any other newcomers? I think that was it.
Carafian was on last time.
Carafian isn't a newcomer though.
No, I know.
But yeah, he did contribute, of course. Like, he was even contributing for this one. Now, now here we are at the twilight before episode 5. This is kind of Beatrice's game has been closed, and we have proposed our mystery. Our answer to the mystery, and now we get to test that theory in the future episodes. But not for a while. We've got a bit of time there to still generate more theories and see how they all hold up. And I hope you guys do come up with more, because there is a lot of different interpretations you can have for Umineko, and this is just one of them. And I strongly urge you guys, if you have the opportunity, reread Umineko. Maybe you won't have the time. I don't expect everyone to do this, but if you reread through Umineko, you're going to get more stuff. It's an absolute. Knowing the things that you know from the later episodes and going back to previous episodes will gain you all new insights, and it's pretty great. And like Caffeine is saying, reread episode 2, because holy shit, episode 2. Like, just even the thing about Kinzo being dead from the beginning gives you a whole new way to read through the episodes. Like, it's quite remarkable. If you don't want to read through the visual novel again, I can safely recommend the manga. It's a really good adaptation, and it includes pretty much all the core stuff you need. Caffeine will disagree with me, and he'll say just read the VN, but I really think the manga is an excellent adaptation. It's also a lot more succinct than the visual novel ever was, so that's another reason to do it. An anime was never made, so you don't have to worry about that. And, yeah.
Oh, man.
I guess it's time to start wrapping this up. I have to announce that, to nobody's surprise, Seraphitic has been awarded the MVP of this tea party. Congratulations, man.
Yay.
You've earned it.
I want to thank PictoShark, actually, mostly.
PictoShark has been very instrumental in these
yes.
this theorizing. We haven't had him on the podcast because various
he knows
reasons.
things. But no, PictoShark, thank you for challenging me on a lot of things and giving me some interesting ideas. Also, thanks to
PictoShark was a definite second for MVP, so.
And he posted way more on the episode 4 thing than I think almost anyone except for Mimsy. Also, thanks, Mimsy.
Yeah, thanks, Mimsy.
Your
Thanks,
insights were also
Rob
great.
as well.
Yes, also Pike Rob.
Anyone else forgetting?
Yeah. I don't know. I think those were the main posters for the episode 4 thread. So,
Yeah.
those guys were pretty awesome.
Yeah, Tentei Riley as well. I think they're new as well. Yeah, it's been awesome because it makes me so happy to see everybody challenging Umineko together as a community without worrying so much about being spoiled, because yeah, it's kind of hard to play through Umineko these days and not just have everything spoiled for you. But I really am glad that we've been able to create this sort of insulated community where everyone is trying to protect the illusion of the witch. And give you guys the opportunity to figure it out in your own way. Maybe we've been a bit hands-on. I know I've been pretty hands-on, more than I probably should have been at points, but I feel like, for the most part, you guys have reasoned this out on your own, and I'm super proud to see you come this far. It's it's like watching my kids graduate. And I will say up front, it is a lot more divisive. There are some people that don't like Chiru, and you guys might be one of them. But I personally love Chiru. I think it's amazing, and I know a lot of other people on Rock Engine love it as well. Even though it does have flaws, I think it's fucking brilliant. So take it how you will. Some people like the first half more, some people don't. But it's very different, and you've got a lot to look forward to there. Well, all I have to say is that episode 5 is fucking fun, and it's a lot of people's favourite episode of all of them. Just because if you like mystery solving and it's just everything great about Umineko is in episode 5. And episodes 6, 7, and 8 are very much sort of wrapping up to a sort of general conclusion. But episode 5 is just fucking bonkers, and I think you guys are gonna love it. So please look forward to that when it comes out. Where do we go from here, guys? That's a good question. So with Rikenjima, we've done these tea parties, and they've been a great success with Umineko. But the Higurashi tea parties have kind of come to a stop, and that's because people haven't been posting, they haven't been reading Higurashi, so there's not really any discussion happening, so we can't form a podcast about it. There's also been musings of people wanting to do a Higanbana or Rose Guns Days tea party.
Rose Guns Days.
Basically, I don't have an answer of what we're doing next because it's not up to me, it's up to you guys. If you want to see content, then you need to get reading and discussing on the forum so that we have content to make podcasts about. If you want to see a Tatari Goroshi tea party, then please post on that topic, share your thoughts in the chapter. If you want to see Higanbana, please let us know, get some discussion happening in the Higanbana topic or Rose Guns days, and we'll work based on that. It's entirely up to you guys at this point, so please show with your actions what kind of content you'd like to see, and from that we'll make a decision. So that's all I have to say on that matter for now. Thank you everybody for joining me on this wild ride. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to joining you once again when the seagulls cry once more in episode 5, End of the Golden Witch. Thank you once again, guys, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.